Hi, I'm David,
And I'm Masu, and welcome to you.
the Hobby Hangout.
Thank you for joining us for this first episode. We have been playing board games, tabletop games, RPGs for over 20 years, and we figured why not share with everyone our passion. So board games have been, and when I say board games, we actually refer to all types of games. It has been really helpful for us to create connections with friends and family, extended family as well. And it helps break the ice sometimes when you bring it to the corporate environment. And so, really, it's about how do you build that gaming community based on who you are, your environment, your context, what your interests are. So we will be talking about that, as well as how to keep your gaming spending in check through budgeting. So why don't we talk about ourselves a little bit? David, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. As we said many times now, my name is David. Over the course of my career, I've worked in operations, primarily in the tech industry. I've always grown up with, an interest and a passion for fantasy and science fiction, whether it's been novels, movies, books, or sorry, not games and toys. And As an adult, I got reintroduced to the gaming environment and the gaming circles or modern gaming and tabletop war gaming through a store called North Bay Games and Hobbies. And I've been lucky enough to share that passion with my family, my kids, and my wonderful wife. Um, and really, as she's mentioned, building our community. And we've moved a lot over the course of our life. And gaming is definitely an aspect to help build that friendship in new environments. So over to you.
Yeah. So I was an accountant for several years, accounting finance mix. And a few years ago, I made my way into product analytics, which I really enjoy. And I'm a UX enthusiast, so I like bringing that UX portion of to the product analytics. And I have also been in tech for most of my career as well, and I really enjoy it. But in terms of gaming, we used to play some classic games when I was younger with my family, but it was not necessarily the main activity that we did. I was more so into sports. I used to play with my brother racquetball for like hours every day. So we were very much into that. And it was until I met David, well, kind of like when we got married, I guess. It was David that introduced me to board gaming, more specifically to Warhammer tabletop game. Is it tabletop? Yeah, tabletop, right? That's the
Yeah.
classification.
More gaming,
Okay,
yeah.
so Warhammer was my introduction into it. And then from there, we just started kind of like getting out there to different stores and seeing different games and getting a little bit more interested in different type of gaming and expanding our community. And so, yeah, here we are now sharing about it. But so, why don't you tell everyone what we're going to be discussing in this first episode?
Yeah. So today's episode, we'll be talking about creating connections through shared experiences and how gaming can help facilitate that. So let's roll the dice and dive right in.
Yeah, so let's start maybe with our childhood. What memories do you have from back then?
Yeah, so I think one of the key memories that I have growing up is a board game that I'm sure most people are familiar with, Monopoly. I recall, sitting down at the table with my brothers and my sister and my parents, and playing long games of Monopoly, and just the humor that would occur around the table whenever we would get into bidding sessions for real estate. Because one of my brothers would always end up, funny enough, just bidding against himself, and oftentimes ending up paying more than what the property was originally worth, and just causing that silliness and fun around the table. So that's a memory that's I've always had, and I can always easily recall because of that experience. Um, and I mean, obviously growing up, games aren't the same then as they are now. Board gaming in general has gone through a very big expansion. Different types of games out there now, all sorts of different themes and methods of playing games. But even though it's always nice to experience new games, I always recall that, growing up, all you really needed was a deck of cards. And I remember my parents even getting this big book of, I think it was like 1,000 different card games. And us as kids just reading through it, learning new card games and having that fun together, and playing games. It was always something fun that we could easily do together without much being required.
Mhm.
What about you?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, I was more so into sports. But here and there, we will play Monopoly in my house. And I remember it the most as an activity to do after my exams. So where I'm from, we used to have exams every month, not every like midterm. And, it wasn't twice per semester, it was every month. And so along with that, I was submitting projects and it was a little bit too much all the time. So you were like on the go every day. And just to slow it down, this stress reset, I found that Monopoly was great. But one of the things that was even making it even better was I will usually save some money so that whenever we were going to play Monopoly, then I'll go to the corner store, get us some snacks, and then we will play for hours until we just couldn't do it anymore and we had to go to sleep. And then with my dad, what we used to play was actually dominoes. So my dad, it seemed like he really enjoyed that logical aspect, I guess, that he was always counting what are they called? Tiles? Chips? Tiles?
Tiles, yeah, or cards.
Yeah. So he was always counting them because there's only seven of each of the different numbers. And so he will always corner us. Like it always worked for him. And so we used to play very often with that. I remember though there was the one time that out of nowhere he came out with a clue game and we played it and it was fun. But it was something that was it sticks in my head in my memories because it's not something that I would have expected my dad to get. And I think that we only played it one time. I think we had fun, but it wasn't his jam. His thing was the dominoes. But yeah, that's what I remember the most. Um, now you, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I always wanted I also recall obviously in high school, there's always, I don't know if the word's cliques or groups, like there's always that somewhat separation of groups of people that share a common
Communities.
need. Communities. Yeah. Those communities that get built within just school population. And me myself, I always saw myself as someone that had friends in a number of groups, and how do you relate to those groups? So I always recall, especially during lunchtime, during that lunch period, how games was a way for me to integrate and interact with a lot of these different groups in different ways. So like our track and cross country team, when I would meet with them, I would play hearts. Hearts was always the game that we played. When I met with some of the other groups, we would play gin and rummy. When I'd sit with my Italian friends, we would play scopa. And when I'd meet with some of the other groups, we'd play dominoes, and just having those different games at the game lunch sessions really helps you breach that gap on different groups of friends and have that commonality, and as the topic says, that shared experience together.
Hmm.
So games can be a tool there to bridge that gap and create that commonality.
Now, what happened with your gaming once you moved to university?
So when moved to university, I kind of stopped gaming altogether. Obviously, there's a lot of work involved going to university, studying, exams, and all of that. And as you mentioned, the stress can be overwhelming at times growing up in school. So I remember one day I was walking downtown and I stumbled across North Bay Games and Hobbies was a store, or is a store. Went going inside, meeting the store owner, Terry Peacock, and him just taking the time to talk to me about what all of this was. It was all brand new to me. Sort of that modern gaming, where I was familiar to, just cards, Monopoly, Bingo, Clue, just seeing all the different types of board games, the tabletop miniature board games, all seemed new and fantastic to me. So being introduced to Lord of the Rings was the where I kind of stepped foot into there. Um, and the one thing that I really enjoyed about tabletop wargaming, it created this connection between gaming and fantasy, and from my perspective, art. I always grew up very artistic. A lot of or everyone in my family, I guess, we did a lot of drawing and painting, and I know my sister did sculpting and stuff like that. And my dad would do things like that as well, and my mom, and so just being able to build these miniatures, paint them, um, was an aspect that I had never thought of and never made that connection to gaming before. And I really enjoyed it. I ended up starting to do some commission work. Used to build terrain pieces for people. Had an opportunity to build things for people in the States and ship them. So it was great. It was brand new experiences for me.
Yeah, so I wasn't around by then until just after, right?
Yeah.
So we met in university, um, and then we got married while I was still in university. And so once we moved in together, I think it was when we bought our first home. That's kind of like my earliest memory of gaming. Um, that house that we bought had two very big rooms. I mean, very big compared to what you will usually expect from a townhouse. And one of the main rooms, of course, was our master bedroom. And the other one was still just as big as the master bedroom, probably. It had a walk-in closet. And we figured this is going to be our gaming.
Space.
Yeah. And so we had the closet was full of miniatures. Back then, I don't remember owning that many board games. I think it was mostly Warhammer stuff, right?
Mostly Warhammer. We still had some board games, like we had Pandemic, Stone Age, were some of the first ones that we got.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, we slowly built our collection from there.
And then did you make the table back then? I'm pretty sure that you built it,
Yes,
right?
yeah, I made a table. It was somewhat shoddy, but it worked. Um,
It stood.
yeah, it stood.
Yeah, and then I also remember getting, kind of like for our guests, we used to have a sofa bed, but for the most part, it was my brother-in-law that he actually used to come every weekend to play with us, which was pretty fun. It was part of the experience as well. Um, and I remember there was this one time when I was pregnant and I just had the cravings, right? And I wanted a hot dog wrapped in bacon and and then just put it inside of a hot dog bun. And so that was supposed to be our lunch, like kind of like in the break between gaming. And they got so sick from it. Like I was completely fine. But it's like it's not just about the gaming, it's just like kind of like the whole experience of, again, having my brother-in-law coming over every weekend, staying over for the night and continue playing the next day, and then having these adventures with the food. It all kind of like adds up to a great memory, I think. Um,
Yeah, and just thinking back on that first house that we had, um, we actually had some various gaming, I guess, occasions there.
mhm.
Just recalling now, we had some of our friends from our university come and visit us and stay
Right.
there. I remember them making us breakfast in the morning, but in the evening we had played just board games all night. Having my cousins visit from LA, and us introducing them to new board games there. And funny enough, that's kind of like the reputation that I have between my cousins in LA and in South America, that when they come and visit us, there's going to be board games. They're excited to play these new games that we're going to show them. Um, and even hosting, uh, I'm pretty sure we played Cards Against Humanity there one evening. I feel like somebody tipped over on their chair and fell.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. With a lot of my friends from high school, we had them over for dinner or lunch or something, and we were playing card games. So I remember that as well. And even our neighbor, we got to know one of our neighbors. He had invited us over one evening, and we had a couple, because it was a townhouse complex. So we had a couple of individuals come over to his place, and we brought board games. So we had introduced them to board games as well that evening. So again, it creates that shared experience that makes talking and creating that connection a little easier,
Mhm.
and not so forced.
Yeah, I will say, like, now that you're saying about our neighbors, like, I remember them hanging out all the time and,
Yeah.
like, we were a little like, I'm an introvert, so, I wanted to get to know them, but also I didn't know how to approach them, so I think when you have board games, then it gives you something to talk about, even if it's not necessarily about the person, it's just about the game, but it breaks the ice, like,
Yeah.
literally, and then from there, from that memory, whether you're doing something in particular that prompts a different conversation, or just simply you see them later and it's like, oh yeah, my board gaming buddy. It just like makes it easier to start talking to them.
Mhm.
Mhm. After that, what did we do? Because we have been moving around a lot.
Yes. We like change.
Yes.
So we typically through that course period of our lives, I think we move maybe every 2 to 3 years
Yeah.
almost. Um,
Sorry for the shaking here because my dog is very excited, thinks that we're probably talking to her. So sorry about that. But yeah, continue.
so yeah, we did move around a lot. And I think gaming gave us that opportunity to meet new people in our new environments or our new houses as we moved. And as we moved, obviously our family grew.
Yeah.
And we had children. And that in of itself obviously creates changes in your life, and also changed how we experienced gaming in general.
hmm
Um, I don't know if you want to talk to any of that.
Well, I remember because we used to be like very much into Warhammer before. That was kind of like the main thing that we used to play. But then once we had my daughter, it just wasn't as easy because Warhammer requires a lot of time to play. Like it's at least 3 hours, I would say 2 hours at the very least.
Hmm.
And so having babies, just it doesn't make it as easy, even though they're, taking naps and whatnot. They still require a lot of attention. All that waking up throughout the night just gets you tired, and you just don't have the will to say, okay, I'm just gonna play for 2 hours here. So I think that we started. I'm pretty sure that that's when we started playing more board games that were
Yes,
shorter, right?
yeah. Our shift definitely started leaning towards more towards board game and experiencing more of what that modern board game environment has to offer. Um, and I mean, I still play some tabletop wargaming nowadays, especially as my daughter is older and I can play with her, and my son is interested as well. But I do think since we shifted to board games, it's always been more heavily weighted to board games now.
Yeah.
And I don't personally find that as a bad thing. I love the board games that are coming out nowadays. There's definitely a lot of uh, complexity and strategy involved with them and different themes, and some of them are very fast paced and quick and easy and fun. But I think that's the key thing is finding something that's fun for everyone that's involved.
hmm
Um,
And I mean, now that you mentioned that, is when our daughter was old enough to start paying attention to the games, regardless of whether she could do everything by herself. But like once she started showing some interest, that's when we started having our game nights, which I remember we will wait for my son, back then a baby, to go to sleep, which was pretty early, like early enough. The other one will wait. And then we used to make it a thing where we had snacks, maybe we had some drinks, and then like including my daughter with her juice and her snacks. And we will just play different board games every weekend. Um, this also was during the pandemic, so it was a great way to spend our weekends as well, where we were just in the house, but we were having fun and experiencing different board games. And again, just having that experience of the three of us doing that together. I do remember the one time when it got really intense, and I think that I was just about to roll the dice or something. The thing is that I had just brought my popcorn that I made, um, and I hit the ball, and it went flying over. So we had to spend so much time cleaning up. But that's like, again, it's not just about the gaming; it's just like the memory that comes with it. Now I'm super careful with my popcorn. But yeah, just making it a snack game kind of thing. It was something that I really enjoy doing.
and just thinking back to before our daughter was old enough to actively participate. Also looking at how we introduced uh, simpler board games, right, to our daughter when she was at a younger age, and even just including her where we could in our own gaming. So I did try a couple of board games that you could play sort of that solo mode board games. But as I played those, I would usually keep her with me and actually let her roll the dice for me, even though she may not fully understand what's occurring. Just having her interact with the board game and the experience itself definitely helped enforce that connection and that bonding, right? As our daughter was growing. Um,
Well, and even with our son being um, still young to start playing, when you will let him play with the miniatures, like that was fun enough for him.
yeah. And it's interesting just to see how they creatively create it. They create their own games essentially, right?
Hmm.
Just giving them access to the pieces and letting them play around with them. They'll create their own game. They'll have fun with that board game. You don't necessarily have to follow the rules that are in the box, right?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah,
Well, that's another thing. When our daughter was, I think, maybe 3 or 4, I was looking at what games I could play. Sorry, what games I could buy for us to play, but that were still interesting enough for me as an adult to play. And I didn't find much, but I did find one game that is great, I think. It was called Race to the Treasure.
yeah,
We don't have it anymore. Our kids outgrew it, but it was really fun. And I think that it has some teachable moments as well for the kids to start learning coordinates, a little bit of very basic strategy. And there's a lot of, like I said, as an adult, like you can't really manipulate the game. So every time is something new. And that was a really fun one. But I think that there's also, and when we talk about, especially about spending money on it, you could reuse any games that you have and just make new rules. So, for example, we have Dixit, which we play often, but we don't play with the rules. So basically, we each have different cards, and we're still trying to get to, like who played what card and like what is their theme there. But we play it in a different way, in a way that makes sense for the kids, that makes it fun for them, that it's still fun for us and still challenging. And just again reusing the same pieces that we already have.
yeah,
Yeah. So why don't we talk about maybe our extended family?
yeah. Um, so I think board games have been a way to, or at least that I found for myself, to reconnect with my family members as we've all gotten older, gone with our lives, gone on with our lives again. Not that we're disconnected, but obviously you have your priorities with your families, your career,
And just
establishing
living in
yourself.
a different
Yeah, living in different
cities.
cities altogether. Sometimes with very long distances between us. But board games have definitely helped reestablish a lot of that connection. Um, I mean, we bring board games everywhere we go nowadays. Even when we go on vacation, we'll bring board games with us. On the off chance that maybe we'll get some time to play either amongst us or we'll meet up with somebody and we'll have the games ready to play on hand,
Yeah.
right? Um, but
The
yeah,
whole bag.
yes. But with our family, with our extended family, like for myself, when we visit my parents and my brothers and my sisters or my cousins are visiting, um, always bringing those board games and looking at what kind of board games we want to play with people, whether they're quick and fast paced, whether they're not dynamic, what's the word, tactile and interacting, or whether they're longer strategic games, getting into role playing and storytelling. Um, they've all create different experiences, but they all create that common experience that all of us can share around a table. And as we've mentioned, it helps create that foundation for different types of conversations outside of. Um, we'll pause right there for a second.
And we're back
And back.
after our dog was playing
Knock the
with.
camera. um, where was I? Yes.
So we were one of the things actually. So we were playing Dungeons and Dragons more recently, and I didn't want to give it a try.
Yeah.
I remember we gave it a try some years ago. It wasn't my thing. It's still not necessarily my things in terms of building stories because I like very clear instructions and options of what to do. But it was actually pretty fun to play as a family. So it was first it was just my brother-in-law, my daughter, and us two. And then my sister-in-law, my two sisters-in-law, is that what it's called? Yeah. Two of them joined and my other brother-in-law joined. And I think that the most fun that I'm having is like how like I know them, right, to be a certain type of person with, certain preferences, but then how they create their characters, it's funny. And then the decisions that they make, because it just allows you to be whoever you want to be. And even go like do things that you as a person wouldn't do. So it's been really fun. And then we keep referring back to our characters here and there during conversations. So that's pretty fun for me.
Um, and also for me, just seeing the growth and change around gaming in general with my extended or with my family, I guess. um, like for example, my parents. Initially when we played with them, I think I tended to lean towards like the simpler games, concerned that they wouldn't potentially grasp all the rules or may not have fun. But the more we played, just seeing them interact and actually show excitement and being committed to certain roles, introducing more complex and storytelling games and having fun with them. And even seeing them now buying games on their own to play between the two of them with the two-player games, especially as they get closer to retirement age. So it's interesting to see how that you start and it sort of just cascades. And we see that with friends too, right? We introduce them and then
Hmm.
they start growing their own collection and then growing their own community as well. It's always interesting to see that occurring.
Yeah. And it also happened with, so we went back to visit my family. And where I'm from, I wouldn't say that gaming in general is part of the culture. It's not mainstream. It's not easy even to find games in stores that that you come across in the mall or whatever. So we brought some games and we had to be very strategic of which ones to bring that didn't require a lot of reading because some of my family, they didn't speak English. And so we needed to find something that was gonna be fun, but also easy to understand. Some of them had some words, but, if it's like 1, 2 words that you have to learn in English just at that time, it kind of like sticks. It's fine. But yeah, I think we ended up leaving 2 or 3 games, there for my nephews to continue playing because they were having fun. And we had a great time with them. And, I remember my brother saying, he was like, huh, like board games are actually fun. Like, you know, um, but yeah, they're not easily available. And that's too bad. But at the same time, it's great that we were able to leave some of them behind and
Yeah.
we replenish our collection, of course.
Even while we were there in Mexico and we went to like what is it? A hotel? A resort by
Yeah.
the beach?
Yeah.
Yeah. We even made it we specifically brought games so we could play in the evening while we were there. Obviously during the day we enjoyed the setting and the beach, but in the evenings we got your brother and your sister and their partner and played board games at night, which was fun.
Hmm. Yeah. What other memories do we have with maybe friends?
Um,
Because I mean, not everyone is gonna have a family nearby, but still, those connections can happen with just about anyone.
yeah. So I guess friends wise, one example is again when we went because we moved around a lot. When we moved back to the general area where I grew up as a child and in high school, we did connect with in some of my friends back from high school, and we used to play board games. And for me, the one memory is around Zombicide and just playing Zombicide with a massive group of people. I think we had 12 people playing.
We were at the
Yeah.
board game, what's it called? The cafe? Board game cafe?
Um, we did do that. That wasn't Zombicide.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We were playing at one of our friends' houses, and we were playing Zombicide there, and then just having that shared experience where everyone's trying to get that common goal, trying to beat the scenario, And at the end, we all made that realization that we had to sacrifice one person, that based on the objectives, we wouldn't lose the mission. But if we sacrificed this one person, the rest of us would make it and we would win the scenario. And then just having that sort of agreement across the table, except obviously the one person that we were going to sacrifice. Everyone else was in agreement and we made that decision. And it's just having that laughing experience and across the table with so many people was fun.
Mhm.
Um, and then, yeah, to your point, going to board game cafes. So that was something new that got introduced around that time in our life. And, we had never been to one before. There was a new one in town. So going to that board game cafe, experiencing that with friends, seeing, other tables of people playing,
Mhm.
really creates that different sense of community, right? There's so many people playing games nowadays. And being able to play games, I think in particular that day was around the social deduction, the resistance. That was the game,
Mhm. Yeah.
resistance. Yeah. So playing resistance, um, and maybe not everyone grasping the rules entirely, that caused more confusion and chaos around the table with so many players. So I
It's still
think,
fun
yeah, it
though.
was fun. It was still fun. But obviously certain people not fully understanding what they were trying to communicate, but still a great experience that everyone got to enjoy that evening.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I guess more in our current friendships with our current location. I don't know if you want to talk to building that friendship.
No, why don't you talk about it?
Well, I think trying to recall, most of it started actually from
Work, right?
work. Yeah. So that's another area where I've personally introduced board games to is in the
Corporate
corporate
environment.
environment. Yes. Thank you for finding the words for me. I've always found that introducing games in that corporate environment helps to one, de-stress sometimes. If you can run quick games during lunch or just a commonly accepted time period for everybody. Um, but also helps create those connections outside of work. And it allows team members to have those open conversations, have um, the freedom, I guess, to talk to each other with no work involved at all.
Mhm.
And that ability to build those connections strengthens teams and helps build stronger teams and higher performing teams in the long run. So I've always been a fan of introducing games in the work environment and leveraging games to build those connections. Um,
Yeah, so then the one particular couple we just picked, I guess, right?
yes, yeah. I think it helped that we had kids
The
the same
same
age.
age,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that obviously helps because your kids can enjoy time together and playing their
So
own
it's like
games.
a
Yeah.
kid play date with an adult play
Yeah,
date together.
exactly. And as parents, I think that's something that definitely helps you grow your community is when you can, and again, not that you only have to play with other parents, but when you can find other families that have kids where your kids can enjoy the experience as well, right? They don't have to do things isolated or on their own. They have
Mhm.
friends, they can build those friendships as well. Um, Definitely a good aspect to build your community.
Yeah. Now let's just kind of like go back now. It just I remember about playing with kids. So when we introduced my daughter, so our oldest one, to gaming, we we just like picked games that we would enjoy and that we thought that she could understand. And we played a few competitive ones, but then now that in hindsight, the mistake that we made was to let her win. Because we just, like she was too young to be able to build a strategy to be able to win. And if you're always losing, then what's the fun in that? So we thought, well, let's get her to win all the time. But then now the problem is that she does not like to lose. So, if you're thinking about introducing games to your family and if you have young children, maybe try cooperative games.
Cooperative games.
Cooperative, yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Um,
our son definitely enjoys those a lot more.
mhm,
But yeah. Um, I think another aspect that I want to talk about in our current stage in life, I guess, is cooperative games, right? So cooperative games, especially campaign style games, create a new opportunity to create a completely different type of connection in your community, right? Um, so we had the opportunity to run a very lengthy campaign, I guess, of a game called Massive Darkness. We all had a lot of fun, fantasy based game.
This
Um,
was with our adult friends.
yes, yeah. So the ability to run that campaign with six of us over a long period of time. So we did it sort of on a bi-weekly to monthly basis where we would try and get together. But we would play the whole day. Like we would make it an event where, people would come over. We'd all cook breakfast together, cook this, big meals because we all had families as well. So having everybody have these big meals, then we set the game up and start playing. Take breaks so that everybody can have lunch together and then take breaks for everyone to have dinner together. And then at the end of the day, everyone goes home. So it's definitely a long day, but it creates a much deeper connection with the individuals you're playing with when you do that type of event,
Hmm.
um, which builds that closer friendship, that closer relationship, which is always good to have in your community as well.
Yeah. And I mean, even if like long campaigns with our kids, right?
Yeah.
We were doing Arcadia Quest for probably it was what, maybe 2 months. And so with kids, it's a little bit different. You can have a marathon, or maybe some kids can, but not ours. And so what we had to negotiate was with my son, how many turns do you want to take? And so we will take only those turns and then we will leave it. We might come back that same day or maybe the next weekend to do a few more. And sometimes it was getting so interesting that he will be like, okay, you know what? Let's do another round. So just having that ability to be flexible. In our case, though, we did have one table that is specific to gaming. It's in a space that is not in the way, so we could just leave it there. Um, but I think that that flexibility of, you don't have to play to finish a game. It can also make it fun and open the opportunities to different kind of games within your family.
Yeah. Um, and I think it's the main point that I know we've talked about a lot gamings and like our life stages, I guess, and how gaming interacted or impacted those areas. But for me, the key thing is always around the connections that we're building. As we move from city to city, the connections we built there, the people we've interacted with, the community we built and maybe left as we move. Um, it it has an impact on your life, on your memories, on your well being to a degree, and just being able to create those lasting memories and those experiences that you can recall. I think are a positive thing, um, and being able to have something like a game where you can create that connection also helps you build the foundation for other things, like being able to have more heart to heart conversations with your spouse, with your kids, with your friends. Um, Often that expectation of, oh, we need to talk more, um, can't just come out of the blue, right?
We do need to talk more.
Yes. But games help you build a foundation that you can build upon with other things and other conversation, other topics, whether serious or not serious. But I find games is an avenue where you can start building that foundation in a safe and friendly environment.
Mhm.
So that's to me one of the important things and important aspects of gaming.
And creating a commonality too, right?
Yeah,
Like you have right now, you have a topic in common.
exactly.
It makes it easier to start a conversation.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I mean, I know nowadays, like I said, the gaming industry is booming. There's lots of different types of games. There's brand new games, there's Kickstarters and everything like that. But I think it's important to remember that the experience of gaming together doesn't need to cost a lot of money.
Hmm.
You can do it with a deck of cards, a domino set, pieces of paper, and play charades.
Hmm.
I mean, us introducing charades recently with our families, it's fun. It's enjoyable, right? Just not something that's cutting edge, but it creates that shared experience very easily and then doesn't cost anything. Um, so yeah, you don't have to spend $1 million to have fun.
Mhm.
I think that's always something important to keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we're wrapping it up for our first episode. I hope that there were a few things that could be helpful for you in, creating those connections with friends and family. And, again, this is only our experiences, and I know that everyone is going to have a different experience. So if you have any stories to share with us, leave it in the comments. If there was something that we said that, was a light bulb moment for you, we will also love to know about it. So what is our closing phrase? Do you remember it?
No, we don't have a catchphrase yet.
We
I will
do.
work on that. No, we don't. But we can always say, roll the dice, subscribe, have fun. Remember, board games aren't just about moving pieces around the board. It's about creating that shared experience, and always connecting with the individuals that you're at the table with. So until next time,
Okay. Bye.
bye.